There we have got two stories for you today from the book of John, and one of them is kind of short, but I wanted to fit it in here because it fits real well with things we've been talking about before. So, uh, to start with, um, first story takes place right after the one in which Jesus had stopped to talk to the woman at the well and stayed with the Samaritans in that town for a couple of days. And as he continued his journey, he and his disciples went on through Samaria and they headed for Cana. Now, you may remember that that's where we had had the story of Jesus at the wedding and helping to replenish the wine when they had run out. Well, he was back there, and the people in Galilee had seen him in Jerusalem. Now, I'll back up and say that when he had stopped and talked with the Samaritans and stayed with them, he had been in Jerusalem and was on his way to Galilee. Well, while he had been in Jerusalem, he had done some miracles, and people there had gotten back to Galilee ahead of him. Of course, they didn't stop in Samaria like he had done, and word had spread around. So when he showed up in Cana, he was much more popular this time than even when he had been there for the wedding, because as you remember, for the wedding, he had kept what he had done pretty quiet, and only a few of the servants had heard it. So now people are showing up, and they have heard things about Jesus, and people are wanting to see him. Well, one of the people who shows up is a royal official from Capernaum. Now, um, the journey Jesus had taken with his disciples from where the Samaritans were in Sychar to Cana was about 49 miles. So we're talking 2 to 3 days to walk there. The official who's found out about Jesus is in Capernaum, which is about 22 miles away. So it's a good long 1 day journey if you get started early and get going. He goes to Cana when he hears Jesus is there. The reason, he's got a son who is very ill and about to die, and he knows no one can heal his son. He's heard about Jesus, though. He goes to Jesus and says, "Can you come with me? My son is about to die." And we've heard this kind of story before where somebody has come to Jesus asking for healing for someone else. In this case, Jesus is a little bit irritated and says something like, you know, no one will believe without a sign, meaning no one will believe without a miracle. Uh, but the man persists, please come help my son. And we are not sure why Jesus is irritated about this, but it seems like with other things that were happening around this time that people wanted the miracles done, but they weren't really wanting to change their lives and follow God when the purpose Jesus had was to uh, convince people to follow God. Okay, if they're not doing that, then the signs and the wonders that he is doing is not helping the way he wants it to help. Um, However, Jesus does love children, and he sees that this man is really desperate, and he tells the man, "You may go. Your son will live." It's possible that one of the things that people had trouble with faith was thinking that Jesus could heal any other way other than being right there with a person who needed it. We'd seen with the centurion that that his servant was able to be healed. The centurion understood that Jesus just had to say so. This royal official hadn't. Now, there's one other thing I was thinking about this is that the royal official was working for Herod Antipas. This is the guy who had John the Baptist killed. So it would be difficult for you to not want to blame this guy for being part of the problem with John being killed. But Jesus rises above that. He looks to the need of the person who is sick, and he heals the son. The man goes on his way. He believes Jesus. While he's on his way back to Capernaum, some of the servants show up and say, "Your son is healed. He's fine." And the official says, "Well, when did it happen?" And they tell him, "Oh, it's about 1 o'clock yesterday." And the man then realizes that's the exact time Jesus had told him his son would live. He now has more than just a small faith in Jesus. He has great faith because he realizes just what kind of power Jesus has. And he and his household all end up becoming strong believers in Jesus. And God's purpose is served. Now, with the next story, this comes in the next chapter. The first part was in John chapter 4. We're now in John chapter 5, and this just flows right on through in the Bible when you're reading it. In John 5, it's sometime later, Jesus goes to Jerusalem. And this could have been a year later or more than that. And there are several gates in Jerusalem, and he goes in through the sheep gate. And they think it got its name because it's close to the temple and where the sheep would be taken in for the sacrifices. Anyway, the sheep gate is close to the pool of Bethesda. Now, Bethesda means house of mercy, and it seems to have that name because that's where a number of people in physical need would stay. The area was two pools of water separated by a covered walkway, and then there were covered walkways all the way around it. So I had 5 of these in there, and it's interesting, and I want to get exactly what Jesus says. So I checked my Bible over here. There's a man there, an invalid, so they think he was paralyzed, but whatever it was, he couldn't move himself. He had been in bad shape for 38 years. So he had been ill or unable to take care of himself and move himself around longer than Jesus had been on earth. And Jesus goes to him and says, "Do you want to get well?" Well, one of the funny things is in life, and I don't mean funny, ha ha, it's just kind of strange that people will do, is often you can give them a very direct question and they won't answer it. They may be thinking about what you mean, or they may be thinking about something else, but not directly answer the question. Well, Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be well?" The man doesn't say yes. That's really what he should have done. Instead, he starts talking about the pool and the water's being stirred and he can't get in there. Well, some of the oldest manuscripts don't have a section that we have in the footnotes of our Bibles. And it seems like somebody came along later to write an explanation of what the guy was talking about. And the story goes like this, and we're not sure just how accurate it is or not. It seems that there was some truth to the story, but that the waters in the pool, like in any pool you can imagine, are pretty still, except when someone's getting in or getting out. And that they thought that occasionally God would send down an angel to stir up the waters, and when people would see it being stirred up, the first person who got into the pool would be healed from whatever he had, whether he was blind or paralyzed or had some disease or something, that person would be healed. And so when Jesus asked him, "Do you want to get well?" the man says, "When the waters are stirred, there's no one to help me get into the water, and someone gets in ahead of me." So he is really giving an excuse rather than actually answering the question. Well, Jesus just moves right on to what he's there for. He says, "Get up, take your mat, and walk." Now, that seems like a simple thing. Of course, the man being there had a mat. It'd be sort of like a quilt, maybe, that he could lie on because most of the ground and everything else would have been hard to be on, and beggars and invalids, people who could not move around, would need some kind of cushion uh, to lie on. And that was really all he had, unless he had someone bringing him there in the morning and coming back for him in the evening. Well, the big miracle in this, the man is healed, but it's a bigger healing than than people even then would realize, because if he had not been walking for that many years, his muscles wouldn't have been right. The bones in his legs would have changed and not be able to support his weight. So when Jesus healed him, he did a great healing because the man was able to get up. Well, he got his mat and he walked off. Jesus kind of slips off into the crowd, which was easy to do because he wasn't as universally known at this time as he would be later. The man's walking along with this mat, and some of the Jewish leaders see him and say, "Hey, why are you breaking the law?" Well, turns out this day is the Sabbath. Now, there were a lot of rules for the Jews to follow. Some of them applied only on the Sabbath day because that was supposed to be the day devoted to God. Now, the part they missed in this is that um, loving acts were allowed. Certain actions that you might take could be excused because of what you were doing. In this case, the man was carrying all he had with him. It's not like what the rule said. And I looked it up back in Jeremiah, was saying, you're not supposed to carry loads, meaning you're not supposed to do work. And people had added on to God's rules and said, "Oh, you can't carry anything." Well, that's kind of silly. And Jesus ended up doing a lot of his miracles on the Sabbath to show that no, the Sabbath is done for man, and it's for man to do great works and to help one another. So they fuss at this guy, and he says, "Well, that was the man who healed me, told me to get my mat and walk." And they said, "Who was it?" Well, he didn't know. He didn't know who Jesus was. Well, later on, the man is up at the temple, which, as you may recall, is not far away from here, and doing what seems to be proper, because after you've been healed, you would want to go to the temple and praise God and thank Him for everything that was done for you. And Jesus shows up to him then and said, "All right, you're healed. Now stop sinning, or something worse will happen to you." Okay, people have done a lot with this and tried to make a lot out of it. And you can think of different things. Either this man had done some sin, and that's what caused him to have an injury and be paralyzed long ago. It's possible that God had punished this man for something he had done. Um, it's even possible that Jesus is just saying that, okay, you've been healed of a little thing, but there's a much worse thing that can happen if you don't follow God, meaning your body will die someday and you may not go to heaven. So could be any number of these things, but Jesus is telling this man something he needs to hear, and this is a good time to tell him because right now the man is thankful toward God. After Jesus leaves, the man will tell the Jewish leaders, "Oh, it was Jesus who healed me," because now he knows who he is. This will generate some problems for Jesus, but the problems are inevitable. There's a coming collision that's going to occur between these teachers of the law who don't have the love of God in their hearts and Jesus, who is trying to promote the love of God. And we will see that in future lessons, but for right now, I'm going to let you go. With this, I did not have a tie that showed a pool, but I had one that showed a lot of water and different people or creatures in it. So that's our representation of the lesson in today's time. Uh, you have a good evening. Hope you can think about this lesson and that you'll be back next time. Bye.